At Spoken with Authority, we like to talk about how to help our clients reduce nervousness. It's a common issue that people have when they're getting ready for a presentation or even speaking up in a meeting. A lot of the strategies that you hear and that we talk about have to do with what to do before you get to your speaking situation, how to gain experience in the long term, how to prepare notes and rehearse in the midterm, and what to do the night before, the day of, and the short term so you could be at your mental and physical best. But recently, a client asked us, what do I do when I get into my speaking role and I feel nervous in the moment? What are strategies I could use real time to help reduce the nervous energy? That's what we're here to talk about today. My name is Christine Clapp. I'm the president and founder of Spoken with Authority, and I'm joined by some of my incredible coaches to talk about what to do in real time when you feel nervous during a speaking role. So to kick us off, David Henderson, what are your best strategies?
Well, Christine, my strategy is to treat this like stall recovery, because that's exactly what it is. And I say that because a client recently asked me the same question. This client is an attorney. And my initial thought was, hey, the way that you avoid this is by making sure that your notes are organized in a way that lets you find your place when you lose it during your presentation. And then the follow-up was, okay, but what happens when you have your notes and everything? I've done it exactly as you told me to, David, but I just freeze up. I can't remember anything. And that is why I say at that point, you are in a stall, my friend, and you have to have a plan for stall recovery. Let me flesh this out by saying, I've got a couple of lawyer friends who are wealthy enough to where they own their own airplanes and they like to fly their airplanes. I can't say I have this problem, but what they do tell me is one of the things you have to do when you're training to be a pilot is you have to go into a stall and recover from that stall. Hard for me to think that potentially falling out of the sky is a more controlled process than losing your place during a speech, but it kind of is, because at least you can initiate the stall and practice the stall before it actually happens. So that's the big problem we have is, how do I practice getting out of the stall before I'm stalling when it's really, really important? The best advice I can give you there is to get up in front of people enough to where you're in enough stressful positions before you're in one that really counts to work through it when you're doing that big presentation for work, because you want to have that practice before. The other thing you have to know is what it takes to jumpstart your engine when you're in the stall. Therefore, taking the notes isn't enough. You have to be able to think through, when I can't find my place, how do I write notes in a way that's going to trigger my thought process to get the engine revved up again? A big part of how you do that, and this is especially true for lawyers, because we love to write things down, and we don't love practicing saying out loud what we've written down, and there is a big disconnect there. So if you're only good at writing it down and you're not good at thinking through how you actually say it, those beautiful, eloquent, lovely notes that you have written down are not going to save you from a stall recovery. So get up there under stressful circumstances where you can work through it, and make sure you know what it takes to jumpstart your engine. That's my advice, Christine.
David, excellent advice. And I could not agree more that the practice out loud gives you that experience of freezing or stalling. When you're practicing, it will happen, especially in those early rehearsals. And that's the exact same thing that happens when you have that jolt of nervous energy in front of an audience. But it is relying on that practice that will help get you going again, get you back up to altitude. And one of the things that I've read in the research on nervousness is that when you are nervous, it's harder for your brain to pull from short-term memory than from long-term memory. That somehow the cortisol inhibits our ability to recall short-term memories more. One of the things you can do then is, with those notes, with those practices, try to start earlier. So rather than the day or two before your presentation, start a week or two before with the rehearsals, so that it's in that long-term memory and you have an easier chance of recalling when you are having the stall. Lisa, do you have some suggestions on what we can do to reduce our nervousness in the moment while we're speaking?
I do, and stall is kind of a helpful word for the transition to what's on my mind, which is that in a stall, there's kind of a wait, there's a pause. So I would combine two things, which are pause and breathe. I think when we get into that situation where we don't know what we're going to do, we're the deer in the headlights, we feel like our job is to go. My job is that something is supposed to come out of my mouth right now, and it should be good. I can't come up with that unless I give myself the brain space to come up with what that's going to be. I have to stop. And I think we feel like we can't, especially when we're nervous. We can stumble over ourselves, words just tumble out, or something happens that wasn't the thing that we meant to say because we want to fill what feels like an awkward space. Own that space. So if you know you might have a tendency to be nervous, pause first. When you get up to that lectern or when you get into your speaking position, stop, gather yourself. Those notes that David's talking about, take a minute. Are they in front of you? Do you have the things that you need? Have you taken one really good deep breath that's going to get you through the first things that you have to say? So the pausing and the breathing really go together. It seems crazy that we have to tell people to breathe, but it's the first thing that we don't give ourselves when we're nervous. We do that shallow breathing that is going to keep us alive, but it's not going to feed what we want to say, and it doesn't give us that strong presence. So just being willing to say, the audience is not going to wonder what's wrong with me. They're not going to get up and leave the room if I take a minute to gather myself. We know that multitasking isn't really an actual thing, right? If we're doing one thing, we can't do another thing at the same time. So if the first thing that's important to me is to be ready for what I'm going to say, let's give myself some mental space to do that. Pause, take a deep breath, take another pause and a deep breath. If you get going and you need to regather again, you can do that throughout your presentation. So they seem like really obvious things that our body demands of us anyway, but we have to be intentional about them and realize that nobody's going to be surprised or thrown off if you have the presence of mind to get your feet under you before you start or as you continue.
Great advice, Lisa. Could not agree more on the idea of pausing and breathing, especially at the beginning. I was recently coaching my son through giving the speech at his 8th grade promotion. It was so much fun. And one of the things we talked about is you're going to be sitting on the stage, and as you go up to the lectern, take the time, walk slowly, and when you get there, plant your feet, soften your knees, arrange your notes, engage your core, roll the shoulders back, relax the shoulders, have your head nice and tall, like your head is reaching for the ceiling, chin down, look up, smile, breathe, and then say the first word. So that helps you as you get that nervous feeling as you are going to start. It gives you a little bit of time to take the moment to calm your body and to do the breathing. So could not agree more, and really think that thinking about that intentionally, especially when you're on a stage, you're standing up at a lectern, can really help in real time slow down the breathing and the nervous energy. All right, Lynn, what about you? What are your recommendations?
I'm building on what David and Lisa just said in terms of pausing, resetting. Sometimes that reset comes from within, though. It's the intention, as Jean has said in the past, why am I here? Why have I been asked to speak at this occasion at this time? I have something to offer this audience. And even if I get flustered, if I get too much in myself, I'm not giving the audience the opportunity to hear what I came to share. So sometimes as you get flustered and you're looking around, go back to the intention. What is it that I really want to share with these people? And that may help reset your presentation and get you back on track. Take it away from you and become more than yourself.
Lynn, I'm so glad you brought that up. And Jean's probably saying, yes, I agree. Jean is always about the audience. Public speaking is not about you, it's about your listeners. And the fact is that you can give an amazing presentation, even if you feel nervous, if you're able to connect with and provide value to those listeners. When you think about some of your favorite speeches of all time, I think of Dr. King and I Have a Dream. I am sure that he felt very nervous that day on the National Mall. He also gave one of the most important speeches in US history. Doesn't mean because you're nervous that you cannot connect with your audience and have a compelling message that resonates with them. So it's not about you, it's about your listener. Could not agree more. Jean, I'm sure you have more to say about audience. What is your advice?
Well, yeah, thanks for that segue, Lynn. I ask people a lot when they're talking about their nerves, and I say, when you're feeling nervous, who are you focusing on? And they pretty quickly know it means they're focusing on themselves. And so just turning that focus to the audience, it sounds a little counterintuitive because it's the judgment of the audience or the perception that the audience is going to be judging that often makes us nervous. So getting that focus that the audience wants to hear from you, they want you to succeed. They don't want to waste their time, and putting the focus there. And I think one way you can do that is painfully simple, and it's to smile to your audience, to look at them and smile. And what can happen when you do that is you find that someone out there, and probably several people, are smiling back at you. And so when you can make that eye contact and that little connection with a smile, you'll be focusing on the audience, and you'll find that you're not thinking about yourself anymore.
That is really awesome advice, Jean. I love it. Smiling, connecting. The other thing I would add as my suggestions of strategies you can use to help reduce that nervousness in the moment is to combat the experience that you have of fight or flight when eyes are trained on you. One of the reasons why evolutionary biologists think that we get so nervous when we're presenting is because not that long ago in human history, when eyes were trained on you, you were prey. A predator was going to eat you for dinner. And we still, in the present day, have that experience of fight or flight, even though the stakes are generally never life or death in a presentation or when we're speaking up in a meeting. But our amygdala, that lizard part of our brain, that ancient part of our brain, tells us that. So one of the things that can be really helpful, especially in the beginning of your presentation, when your nervousness level is generally the highest, is to think about ways to get the eyes off of you. So think about, in the introduction of your presentation, can you use a prop that gets the eyes, people looking instead of at you, at the thing? Or maybe there's an interesting picture, visual you have on a slide that you can share. Perhaps there is a quick video clip that you could show. Again, ways of getting eyes off of you at the very beginning so that you feel a little bit less of that fight or flight response when you initially start to present. So having some place for the eyes to go is great. Another idea to think about is if you are online with the eyes trained on you, one of the things you could do is just to minimize the gallery of faces so that you can't see all the eyes trained on you. Just look directly into the camera as if it's you in the camera. Minimize or cover up the gallery so that you don't see people looking at you while you're making your contribution to the meeting or you're presenting in your online conference. And that can sometimes help reduce the nervous energy. The other thing that you can also consider is if you want to have the audience there so you feel more present with them and you can read the room more, one of the things that you can do is to hide the self view. Some of the research that came out early in the pandemic showed that we are experiencing nervousness and stress when we're presenting online because we're seeing ourselves. Before the pandemic, we didn't look at ourselves for hours a day. We might have seen ourselves in the mirror in the morning and at night, and maybe when we use the restroom or walk by a window at a downtown building, but we did not stare at our face for hours and hours a day. So going into your video conference setting and hiding self-view can also help lower your level of nervousness and can help you feel a little bit more comfortable in an online communication situation. Well, I wanted to thank the team. Thank you so much to Lisa and to Jean and to Lynn and to David for all of your great suggestions on what you could do in the moment if you're feeling nervous when you're presenting. It's really great to have your advice to share with the Spoken with Authority community.